Welcome back to Terraverse TV, friends. It's John Altarelli, your host again. Today, we're going to be covering a topic that is probably at the forefront of most people's minds, given the political season. And frankly, the last two elections have been pretty contentious. So I just want to talk a little bit about what's happening to free speech, what's going on in the way of political discourse, the uncivil way people are interacting with each other, the sort of dogma and almost outright hatred that's gripping the country and frankly the world. And I am very, very concerned about it. I normally would not jump into this topic because it's got a lot of political undertones, but because I can't help myself when it comes to free speech and the ability for people to disagree or agree to disagree in a civil manner, because if we don't get back to that, I spent my entire life, on one side or the other of the parties, and I don't ever recall this type of rancor among people when it came to politics. There was always the political season, always, during the candidates were out there, but after the election, people went back to their jobs, did their thing, and there wasn't a lot of back and forth. But every season, every political season since then, not only it doesn't end just after the election, it continues and it starts all over again. It gets even worse. People want to attack the person who was elected, and it's really a problem. So today we're going to see some clips. We're going to talk about them afterwards, but there's some interesting things out there I think we should look at, just give you some perspective on how uncivil the discourse has been and how political contentiousness has really gripped us. Before we start, please subscribe, like, share, hit the bell for notifications, and please bring me your comments. But again, I'm against sort of this, sort of uncivil discourse. So if you put a lot of nasty stuff in there, you're not likely to get a response. But if you are reasonable and you want to talk about something, you want to disagree, you're open to do so. We expect and welcome that. But try to be adult about it and try to be above the fray here and just have your opinions heard without having to attack people who don't necessarily agree with you, okay? So let's get started. The first clip is a little bit interesting one. I saw Ricky Gervais, and it's sort of funny that we have to have a comedian do analysis that is so obvious, to most, I think, rational people. But it's pretty funny that you don't hear this from the news media, you don't hear from the pundits, you don't hear from pretty much anyone. But this is a good way to get into the segment. So I'm going to start with the clip. Why don't you run that? By the way, Jenna, our producer, does all the work in the background. She's going to bring the clips tonight. And here we go.
Will have a female president.
When there's a competent one?
I don't engage much now on Twitter because it's sort of pointless. Everyone just falls into two tribes. It's just like cults now. There's no nuance. You can't discuss anything. No one looks at the argument anymore. Anyway, even if you can discuss it, no one looks at the argument. They decide what side you're on, and if you're on the wrong side, they discredit you somehow. They don't want to discuss it. And it is creating a new sort of dogma.
How do you perceive Vice President Harris compared to President Biden in terms of competency and experience?
I think she's worse. She doesn't even know what's going on at the border.
Right.
And that's what she was supposed to be doing and in charge of. I mean, as a school teacher, if I did not do what I was supposed to be doing, you better believe my job would be in jeopardy. Well, it isn't. Not only was her job not in jeopardy, she was just handed a promotion.
Is there anyone that Kamala Harris could appoint as her vice president that you would find reassuring, would make you consider voting for her?
No.
Never consider voting for her. No.
For years, that which should not be questioned, and now we've got it in politics. You can't even have to question something. It's crazy. People shot down, people scared to even ask a question, so they opt out, And then people are angry that people don't speak up. Well, because that they can sort of do without it.
Some here are frightened now just to go outside.
Now it feels like that whole section is just not available to the community
asking our local elected
anymore.
So
our parks are not available to
Can't go there.
anymore.
Search out and give us a list of all of the empty
can't go
lots
to the
that there
parks.
are.
Migrants from a 4,000-bed shelter nearby fill the sidewalks. They sit on park benches, on stoops and curbs, under the BQE overpass. So many people crowded in here, residents feared what was coming.
We have been witnessing the escalation in violence on the street and in the community for months now.
We've been pleading with the mayor, as we've seen increased, that this was going to be inevitable.
And everything's amplified and exaggerated because there's no nuance in a tweet. People go down the tweets and see who people follow now, and they go, "Oh, I thought you'd follow him." Well, you should read more than one opinion. You should speak to all different people and argue with them. If there's one thing that all sides should agree on, it's free speech, and even that is trying to be closed down and restricted now. People are making up their own terms. It's ridiculous.
Let's pause.
It is.
Well, I could not have said it any better than Ricky. This is a real problem. Free speech being canceled, shut down, people making up their own version of the truth. The truth is whatever they believe it to be. Their reality has to be accepted. Their reality has to be your reality. Definitions don't mean what they used to mean, which is not a problem. If we want to change definitions, we should, but we have to have a general consensus on the definition. We have to agree to use the language that we all understand. If you call things something that they're not, it's going to be very difficult for the other person to understand and to deal with your argument or your perspective. So it's a common language, which is what we try to have in this country, is important. And today that is under attack. So what I want to do is go to the next one. I'm going to cut off Ricky, although he does. You should watch this whole segment. He's amazing. He covers a lot of stuff, and I really appreciate what he's doing there. At the great risk of being canceled. As a matter of fact, they tried to cancel him. I think he did the Oscars, and he was quite funny, and people didn't like that he called Hollywood out on its own, hubris and, duplicity. But they don't like that out there. They like to be, in charge of the narrative. Anyway, let's go to some of the stuff where people can't even talk to each other. They can't protest, politely or civilly, and this is where we've come to now in our protesting. So why don't you show a few clips of that, Jen, just to get a sense of what we're seeing out here. This is particularly bad in New York. If you were out here with us, you'll see this at the campuses and the like and everywhere downtown.
Ugly scenes at UCLA as pro-Palestinian protesters and their opponents engage in violent clashes. Anger flared at the line of barricades that has been set up at the pro-Palestinian encampment on the campus.
Shame on them! They're not letting students in based on their ethnicity!
One guy holding a can of what's believed to be bear spray let loose. Brawls erupted. There were fierce confrontations over the metal fencing separating the two camps. Fireworks also flew.
All right. I think we get the
Clouds
message.
of smoke filled the air.
I think we get the message on that one. Wow, not great. I feel bad for the people involved on both sides. I think they should, try to step back a bit. I really feel bad for the worst part. Really, is the campuses that have to deal with this, and the police who are, being told to be very careful about what they do. They can't sort of quell the protest, and it's very dangerous. And I just hope that the youngsters that are going to this stuff, that they be careful not to get hurt. I think it's okay to have their voices heard. I support that. It's free speech. We're all about that in this country. But it doesn't need to get to this point. You can sit on either side of that fence if you want. You can yell at each other. You got their microphones. You got the speakers, and you got your placards. That's enough, okay? Start getting into fights, and, you're going to, what they say, FAFO it's not going to go well, and people are going to get hurt. And if people continue to escalate the type of violence, I see people on both sides bringing now, sort of clubs and sticks and weapons, and I've seen Antifa coming out in full, military garb. That's not a good sign. That'll bring me back to the 70s when we had some serious riots and a lot of people got killed. I hope we don't revert back to that, but that's something I'm seeing pretty much, on the horizon if it's not already here. So why don't we go to this guy, Andrew Lawrence? I could not believe this clip because I've been reading and hearing a lot about what's going on in the UK about actually arresting people for their tweets and stuff, and I just didn't want to believe it, and I didn't want to believe it's actually happened, but it is, and I didn't believe that people actually believe that it's a good thing. But let's watch this clip because this guy is a perfect example of what is wrong with society.
And everything, I suppose. Now, in a few minutes, I'll open the phone lines to some far-right bigots, give them 30 seconds to dig a hole for themselves, call them a racist, then cut them off. I mean, what is wrong with these people? I'm not exaggerating when I say that I'm absolutely sick to death of it. It feels like they're everywhere, the far-right bigots. It's enough that you have to put up with them during the day. But I don't know about you, I go to bed at night and they're even haunting my dreams. These are the sorts of people we're dealing with. I caught my neighbour putting up a St. George cross in his window last month during the Euro.
A guy put a cross up, okay? This is hilarious. Go ahead, let it roll. I couldn't believe this.
Appalling. I confronted him. I said, "Oh, so what? You hate immigrants now, do you? Well, I hope you never get ill and need hospital treatment, because when an immigrant nurse is tending to you and an immigrant surgeon saving your life for free on the NHS, you won't be complaining then, will you? Absolute hypocrites, these people." And then you've got individuals like Farage online stoking the fires, saying things like 500 illegal migrants arrived along the Kent coastline yesterday. So what? What harm are they doing anyone? Leave them alone. 500, 5,000, 5 million. What does it matter? There's space for everyone. Worry about yourself. Get your own house in order. Stop blaming everyone else for your problems. And I'll tell you what, Keir Starmer's onto you. He's got the police looking at your social media, looking at your online activity, and they'll be knocking on your door, they'll be making arrests, and they'll be putting you in prison. And that's exactly where you belong. I hope you rot, quite frankly. If they have to release a few sex offenders or violent criminals to create space for you, then so be it. Because you know what? Hate won't win. It never does. In medieval times, people like you would have been tied to the back of a horse and cart by your ankles and dragged over cobbled streets until you'd broken every bone in your body. And rightly so. Prison is too good for you, absolute vermin. White working class dregs of humanity. And I'll tell you something else. Maybe it's you who should be deported. Because what are you contributing? That's right. Nothing. Nothing, you scum. Thanks for listening.
All right. Wow. Wow. Okay. I don't even know where to start. So I guess white working class scum should be deported. We should let in, and this is England, 5 million undocumented immigrants. Think about what that would do to the UK, which is much smaller than America. And we're struggling with our 10, 14, 20, depends on who you listen to. This guy's an absolute idiot, doesn't realize he probably doesn't have a job, so he doesn't pay taxes or whatever, so he doesn't care. And I'm certainly sure he's not going to be betting any of them down in his house because, people talk good game until it comes down to their property. But, kill them, let criminals, let rapists and murderers out of jail so we can put you sort of white working class people in here because you're complaining that the borders need to be, tied back a bit. Wow. And if you're religious, that's absolutely a bigot and anti-immigrant. I mean, really? Just because you might be religious? That doesn't make any sense to me. And that's where we're at. If you have like in America, if you have an American flag that's deemed to be an issue, you're a problem. They're taking American flags down. Can you believe that? American flags? Any type of religion is now evil. Any sort of normalcy, which I guess normal now is not normal. It's evil. So if you just go to work every day and you happen to be white, you're bad news. You need to go to jail. But by the way, buddy, he said, what are you contributing? Guess what? Probably all the taxes, dude. You know, who do you think's paying for this stuff? Okay? Not the immigrants, and probably not you. But at the end of the day, you know, let's put the white guys in the, you know, in jails, and maybe they can bring some work in there, or put them on work farms so they can continue to produce and pay all the taxes so that so that everyone else can enjoy the luxury of saying the kind of baloney that this guy's saying. I just don't believe that, you know, this guy, right? And then they're going to have other people's Twitter and their social medias, and they're going to get arrested because of hate. There's no hate in that comment, was there? None. That's perfectly normal and legitimate. I'm offended. You know, shouldn't that be a hate crime? It was offensive to me, and I'm sure a lot of other people. But this is the problem. Who gets to decide what's offensive and what's hate? Clearly, it's become political. Okay, because if this guy can get away with that and he's not going to jail, then I don't get the law at all. And I hope that doesn't come to America, but believe me, I've heard a lot of it, and you're hearing it. They're trying to codify in the law, and I'm a lawyer, so I've been paying attention to this, and it really troubles me that they're trying to make speech an assault. They're going to try to weaponize it so that you can say anything. If you say something that's offensive, and offensive is subjective, who decides what's offensive or not, then you're going to be able to be put in jail over that, which is actually happening in the UK, which is amazing to me. And it's on its way here, believe me. If you don't stand up against that, you're going to regret it. You're going to regret it, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, because whoever's in the majority is going to decide who speech is hate. And, you know, as you can imagine, you know, it doesn't stay one side or the other over a long period of time. As you look at history, typically the one party or the other is out about every 8 years. So you're not going to have a full lifetime run of your way of running over people, and then some people are going to push back, and it could be worse than what you hope for. So I encourage people to stop this baloney around free speech. So let's get to a couple of more here, Jen. That guy just had to put out there because I've never seen anything like that. Let's talk about how the news media is dealing with some of this stuff. Sky News, which is I think out of Australia, they're pretty cool. They tend to call it like it is. They're not Americans, so they don't really care what side they take, but they do call out the ridiculousness of some of the media. And unfortunately, most of the media seems to be left-wing today, so they typically take it out on the left wing more than anyone else. But go ahead, Jen, run that clip from Sky News.
You're watching the Rita Pani Show, and now it's time for Lefties Losing It. Let's start, Lefties, with this almighty group meltdown on CNN because Nancy Mace allegedly mispronounced Queen Kamala's name. Watch this demented carry-on.
And right. Kamala Harris, if
Kamala. You said
I will
call you
Nancy
Nancy. It's Kamala. You're doing this on purpose, Congresswoman.
That's
disrespectful.
If,
you can't expect people to
if
respect
a
your
man
service
put on
if
a
you don't
skirt
respect
and walked
her.
that stage 25 years ago, she
You're a
would have
white
said
woman
it. She would have
disrespecting a
taken
black
that
woman. That is
achievement away from
problematic.
women.
Mr.
That's
Dyson, let me get in
disgusting.
here because I want to.
Did you hear that? He said, you're a white woman disrespecting a black woman. Why? By calling her the name everyone has called her for years, decades. How long was she in public life before we were told that her name should be pronounced differently? And can someone alert the president because he's still pronouncing it this way?
And Cam and I are here today to make a major announcement on efforts to lower.
But back to the mass meltdown on CNN. Look at the reprehensible way they treat a lone conservative woman, a woman who carries the trauma of being a rape victim and who showed far more grace than I'd be capable of facing this barrage of lunacy.
When you disrespect Kamala Harris by saying you will call her whatever you want, I know you don't intend it to be that way. That's the history and legacy of white disregard for the humanity of black people.
Oh, so now you're calling me racist.
I didn't say. I just said you weren't
yes,
racist.
That is complete.
No, you don't have to intend racism to
No,
accomplish
you are
it.
intending that
Your
I am
disrespect
racist,
of Kamala
and
Harris
that
is part and parcel of a
Why
tradition
can't you
of
just-
disrespect.
Why can't you just, Congresswoman,
and it's,
why can't you
it's
just...
offensive.
I'm not calling you a racist. I'm
No,
telling
you
you
are.
what the
You
practice
are.
is
You
racist.
are. You
All right,
absolutely
we got to stop. It just never ends. Let's stop that. So she mispronounced her name, and I've struggled with it. I always try to pronounce it correctly, but I hear it so many different ways. I never know which one is the right way. I think you're supposed to rhyme it with Mamala, Kamala, not Kamala. I hope I got it right. I know that it's hard to remember. Clearly, President Biden struggles to remember it. A lot of news media struggle to remember it. And apparently, and again, I don't know the history of this, she used to pronounce it the other way, and now she pronounces it this way. I don't know. I will pronounce it as best I can the way she wants us to pronounce it. So I think, I will try to do that. And I assume that she wasn't doing it intentionally for sure. I certainly know that I never would do it intentionally, and I think most people don't. But it's funny that they get so crazy over a mispronunciation, which is a difficult one to remember, of her name, although I suspect as we get more down the road with the season here and the political debates and all that, people will get it right because they'll hear it enough from the media that they'll start to say it right. So that's helpful. But it's funny, the same people on that panel, they call Trump pumpkinhead, orange face, Hitler, dictator. Nothing is off the table for the very same people. And that's the problem. You can't have it both ways. If you're going to be disrespectful to a president, former president, or candidate for president, and then you have a hissy fit over a slight mispronunciation of your candidate, then you have zero credibility. You're worthless to me because you're just a child, okay? You have no serious bona fides to be on TV or to be debating anything or to have an opinion because that's just baloney. You either stick to your guns and try to have everything correct. Don't be calling people by their names. Stick to their policies. Stick to their words. You could attack their words. And when Trump goes off on his little rants and his little baby stuff where he calls people names, I hate that, okay? I hate that. And I've called him out on it, and I'll continue to call him on it. It's disrespectful. It's not presidential. And I don't want anyone running for office talking like that, okay? And that is my position on that. If you can't be respectful and civil and act like a leader of the free world in our country, then get off the stage. And I mean that for all these candidates that can't do it. And so that's, and another one, and I don't know if we even have the clip on that one, but, they're calling Trump weird. They're calling J.D. Vance weird. I mean, we'll get to another clip later on to see who really the weird people are. But I got to tell you, Trump is weird. I'll concede that point in a lot of ways. But I've listened to a lot of J.D. Vance, and I don't know a lot about him. He's kind of new to me. I knew he ran for president last time. I never really followed him. But I'm now watching his stuff because I'm trying to get myself prepared for the election season. I want to be up to date on all of the candidates. I want to hear what they really have to say, not filtered through the media. And I've watched almost a dozen, if not more, of his news debates. And by the way, he's willing to go on any news station, and he's taken a lot of tough questions. Everyone attacks him. He doesn't get any softballs. They're all attacking him. He's been very measured. He's been very articulate. And he's dealt with all these questions without any of this sort of attacking like this is. I mean, he does hit back, but he doesn't hit back below the belt and with the name calling, and he sticks to the facts and the policy. You can disagree with him. I don't have any problem with that. But he conducts himself, of all the candidates, both presidents, candidates, and the other, and Tim Walz. I watched him a little bit. He's not doing very well for himself to be sort of a respectful person. And here's a guy, ex-military, so I'm not happy with him because I think ex-military should do better. We learned better, although he was National Guard. He wasn't really a full-time military guy. Maybe they don't do as much for the weekend warriors that the active duty guys do. I don't want to ding them, but the active duty guys typically think that they have an easier gig because they only work 1 weekend a month and maybe 1 month a year, and whereas everyone else is full-time for their entire tour. So maybe he didn't have the same discipline that we had in the regular military, but who knows? But he certainly has lost it. If he ever had it, he's lost it, and he's lost his ability to act like a military person. And I hope he gets it back because military bearing is important. It's something that we're trained with. It's something that we carry forward in our life. And I hope he remembers his training. So let's go down to the next one. This is we're going to do a bunch of little clips from the Carter family. I think they do a great job of pointing out some of this stuff. I think there's 4 brothers. I'm not sure, but they're kind of cute. I like them.
Let me ask you about President Biden, because this convention is, of course, about the top of the ticket. It's also about honoring the legacy of Joe Biden, his presidency, his commitment to public service. You've known him a long time. You've worked closely with him. I wanted to ask you about what do you think the hall is going to be like tomorrow night when he speaks?
There is going to be so much love for Joe Biden. There's going to be tears of joy when he walks into that hall. And what he has done, and I love that a major focus of this is going to be on democracy. He literally saved our democracy in the U.S.
Meanwhile, if you look behind me over my shoulder, you'll notice those fences and snowplows in place. We've actually watched all morning as they have started to bring in more metal fencing, more barricades, and these snowplows have been kind of navigating around those barricades.
No. I ain't gonna be no extremist at all because they had those at the RNC.
Yeah, they was trying to.
Yeah, okay.
They did, but they wasn't. But Trump was just shot.
Well, okay.
They wasn't barricading businesses.
You're right about that. Yeah, let's keep going then. Because I was gonna say that looked normal. That was at the RNC, but let's see the business.
There was no snowplow.
Well, okay, so the first segment here, the reason why I put this up there is, first of all, they're talking about the Democratic convention is going to be the summer of love, if you will, and they're going to show all this love for Joe Biden, the guy they just basically kicked out. So that's going to be an interesting turnaround, and that's fine. But look at the armament and look at these sort of barriers. Look what's going on in Chicago. They are expecting what? A war? I mean, this is amazing. Now, I know they did pretty good in Chicago. I actually know because I had some of my colleagues were part of the security detail out there, both the official detail and also a lot of private contractors were brought in, and some of my friends that were contractors were brought in, and they sent me footage, and I had some live feeds from the Republican National Convention. And there was a few incidents, but very few. They did a great job in Chicago, which is surprising given how tough Chicago is, and it's a tough city, and given that it's a Democratic city but they showed out. The cops did a good job. I'm really proud of them. In Chicago, hats off to you guys and girls out there in Chicago. You did a great job, and I'm proud of you. And I know it's a tough job in Chicago, just like it is in New York and all the big cities. It's a very, very tough job to protect any convention like that, or a presidential convention in particular. So, and let's see what's happening here. Actually, wait a minute. This might be in Chicago, right? I think it was Detroit. Jen, you have to check that one. I might have got those cities mixed up. I hope I did, because they're going to kill me. But in any event, yeah, I think it was Detroit for Republicans, Chicago for the Democratic. So maybe it's even tougher then. I got it backwards. But in any event, look at what's going on here, and this is just the beginning of what they're preparing for. And the question is, what are they preparing for? Are they preparing for a right-wing attack or something else? Let's go to the next clip. I think this
are taking some precautions.
WGN's Andrea Medina shows you how some companies in the loop are starting to board up ahead of the big event.
Given the uncertainty surrounding next week's convention, businesses are taking steps to prevent potential threats to their property, like looting or vandalism, by adding protection.
We've had zero indication that there would be any protections down in the loop.
That's why the owner of Sid Jerome Menswear is reinforcing his downtown store by covering up the windows with plywood in anticipation of possible civil unrest and violent protests that may come from the Democratic National Convention next week.
We know from past experiences that something could ensue, so we wanted to be proactive.
Let's cut that
and get
off.
ahead of it.
We know enough. Okay, so they're boarding up the businesses. Can't say I blame them. But that's sort of a new thing for me. I haven't seen that in my history of conventions, but that is pretty interesting. Not good. Doesn't show a lot of confidence in our peaceful, political discourse. And let's go to the next clip, which is
in Chicago. Look at him out there. It's y'all party. Look. Palestine flags, pride flags. How y'all gonna protest y'all own party? Look how many cops are out there. And the National Guard pulled
That ain't
up.
how the RNC was looking.
And it hasn't even started yet.
The RNC was welcoming.
Well,
Man,
see if they can
Democrats.
find the Killer Kamala one. They had a Killer Kamala flag.
I ain't gonna lie, that's a lot of officers.
He replies. Scroll up, he replies. I replied to something. Killer Kamala. And they said Killer Kamala.
They hide, man. I don't think they gonna vote for Kamala. I hope not.
All right, let's turn it up. So this is already happening prior to the convention. It is in Chicago, so I got the cities wrong the first time, but I squared them away here. They're already protesting, and these are, I assume, leftist Democrats who are protesting their own party, which is amazing. So the Democrats got a problem on their hands. They have all of the protests are going to be coming from their own party. Interesting. So that's what's going on. Let's go to the next segment that I want to talk about. Is at the somewhere at some other place with the DNC. Let's see what this one looks like. The next clip.
50,000 people are dead.
Oh shit!
Is it the DNC?
The money. 150,000 people are dead. You are funding a genocide.
I hope the security good. I think they might do some crazy shit.
All right.
Seems like a substitute.
Let's take that down. So even amongst their own groups, they're having some real problems. This is amazing. Again, I hadn't seen a lot of this at the Republican conventions or all the different Trump rallies. There's always been a few protesters, but they're typically people on the left. They're not having Republican Party people. Like, you don't see like sort of religious people coming up there and and arguing for, more abortion restrictions or whatever, or you don't see the gun advocate people out there arguing that, Second Amendment. So at least the Republican Party seems to be a little bit better able to handle their own celebrations or rallies without causing a lot of problems. Again, I'm not picking on one side or the other. This is just out there, and if you find stuff on the Republican side that looks like it's coming from within the Republican Party, I'm interested to see it, but I haven't seen a lot of it. I've seen a ton of this, and it cannot be just ignored. It is really happening. It's happening everywhere. And if you don't want to believe it, then just don't believe it. But these are the facts. Let's go to the next clip. This is the, Tim Walsh calling, when he calls J.D. Vance and Trump weird. I couldn't help but laugh when I saw this clip.
Them. Jamal said, "Babe, I'm gonna see you in Chicago." He really pulled up and saw about that. This your guy right here, Solomon. Tampon Tim, Tampon Tim, Tampon Tim, Tampon Tim, Tampon Tim, Tampon Tim.
That's enough. That's actually
you kind of did something with that.
That's actually a good tune behind it, but I kind of like it. But it's funny because they were mocking Trump over his little dance, and and it's funny. But I don't know about you, but that one's pretty funny. I have to admit that's pretty funny. And I wouldn't go as far as to call him weird, and I wouldn't even have mentioned it, frankly, if he hadn't already said that. Because be careful when you call other people weird and you kind of act like that. And I've seen some of the other clips where he's buying Doritos or having his white man tacos. Yeah, it's pretty weird. Nevertheless, it's a political season. I get it, okay? But frankly, stay off of that ad hominem attack stuff and stick to policies, and then you won't have to deal with the fact that when you go up there and act pretty weird, that you're going to get called weird or worse. Anyway, that's the deal there. Let's go one more, and then I think we'll be done with clips. I'll wrap it up with some final comments, but let's do this other clip. It's Don Lemon, who got fired from his pulpit, and now he's out there trying to become a podcaster. He also got fired from Twitter when he tried to demand some ridiculous stuff from Elon Musk. Not a guy you want to try to negotiate against. He's not going to be very easy to win from. And now he's out on his own trying to resurrect his career and man in the streets. So let's see what he's got to say.
I'm scared for Trump to win. We need a woman in power.
It's really making you anxious?
Yes, stressed, very stressed.
I see you,
Shawty.
I see how you stressed. No matter who wins?
No matter who wins, it's got to be, because this is the best country on the planet.
The prospect of living under the Trump administration for the next 4 years is very frightening to me, so there's a lot at stake.
I'm very excited to see Kamala Harris on the ticket.
For real, for real?
Yeah.
Sure, y'all got a good amount of crime.
Because it's about time we not just have a woman represent the country, but a woman of color. She's going to be able to represent, I think, a broader
I want that quarterback
anybody
because
else
he's
that we've ever
Mexican.
seen.
She's qualified, you think? I want that.
If she wasn't, why would she have done so
He's an
well as...
He's good with the X's and O's. That quarterback, boy, he can think that Asian quarterback.
That's really
and
the
we need
reason.
representation. He
That's
got
really
no speed, though. Nah, you. No cannon. Nah, you. He got that brain, though.
Nah,
he's
gonna
need
get us
diversity.
canceled.
He's going to get us canceled. I don't condone him.
That's really their answers when you ask them why they think Kamala should win.
It's funny.
And it's sad. It's sad.
Nah, Kamala not winning.
Why haven't they started?
What you want to bet?
All right. Well, I kind of like those guys.
They say the Republicans ain't got.
They're kind of funny. They're, they're just regular guys calling it like they see it, and that's fine. I like it. It's fun. But they do have some good, valid points there. And I remember watching them a while back when they first started. They were much more, I think, left. And I think over time, as they've been doing their podcasts and they've been watching these videos, they've sort of shifted, which is kind of interesting. They just were not aware of a lot of things. Like they didn't know who Thomas Sowell was. And when they started to listen to him, boy, all of their thoughts about what they've been taught and told in schools, they realized, oh my God, this is like a total fiction. So I think they've been doing their research now, and they're doing a little bit more homework, and they're paying attention, and I like to see that growth. And it's good to see young people out there trying to learn and get the facts and have their own point of view without just say, hey, I'm black, I have to go with the black vote, I have to toe the party line. It's good to see young people deciding for themselves where they decide what's best for them. And they certainly have. I think most of these guys, most of them went to colleges. I think some of them even played college sports, maybe even D1. So they're educated and they're smart, and it shows. And they don't deny when they're not on top of a topic. They go do the research, and that's what we all should do. So I'm pretty happy with them. So I'm going to wrap this up a little bit. We did a lot of clips today. I think those clips, a lot of them speak for themselves. But the whole premise here of the whole conversation, which I was trying to bring out here, is how uncivil we've become, how the discourse has become so angry. It's so vitriolic. It's just unhelpful. We can't have a rational discussion about anything. You're either on my side or we want to kill you. And I mean, that's what they're saying. That's not an implication. They're literally saying, we should put you to death. You should be drawn and quartered with, by horses, put in jail. And they're actually putting people in jail for their views. And if you're worried about democracy, this is what we have. This is the tyranny. This is what you're talking about. This is what you should be worried about. You want to talk about fascism? You want to talk about Trump? Trump isn't trying to silence anyone. No one. In fact, if it wasn't for Elon Musk, we wouldn't be able to have a presidential candidate, or actually a president, a sitting president, wasn't allowed to be on social media to express his views. How in the world did we come to that? And I was not a huge fan of Elon Musk before some of the things he's been doing lately, but I've come around because I believe he actually is earnest. I believe he actually believes in free speech. I believe he actually wants to do well for this country. And he has taken on the sort of the left ideology. He's taken on the media. He's taken on the government. He has really put himself at risk. And now I get it. If you're the richest man in the world, you've got a better shot at surviving it than most. But this guy is standing up. And I don't think, and I think he'll tell you this, and I think you can look over his history. I always thought he was a leftist. I didn't think he was far left, but I always thought he was left. And he also said that. Look, I was left of center. The problem is the line now has moved so far left of me that I'm now right of center. And I think that is the case. I thought I was kind of squarely in the middle for the most part, more libertarian on a lot of things, and I was very much an economic conservative because I actually know a little bit about economics. That's something that I studied as an undergrad, and I actually worked for a short period of time as an econometrician, which is not an easy job. And you have to know some things about statistics and modeling and how people can use or misuse them. And I see it all the time, and it really frustrates me. But nevertheless, I think this was an interesting segue into a lot of other topics that we're going to cover. I just wanted to start with the discourse is in trouble, free speech is under attack, and if you're worried about democracy, as some people seem to suggest, that's where it falls apart. You lose free speech, you lose democracy. That's the first thing that gets attacked. Look at any of these communist states, look at what the Marxist doctrine is, look at sort of any totalitarian regime, look at any fascist regime. It is where it starts. And if you start there, if you bring America down to the level of the rest of these countries, then you've lost what we have here, which is the best society in the world. It has its flaws. We try to do better. Remember, that's We're striving for a more perfect union. We should be getting better every year, not going the other way. But that's where I see it going, and I'm very disappointed. And I decided I'm going to speak out about it because I don't want to die knowing that I didn't try to do anything to educate people to sort of at least use their head, use their mind, use their voice. And I don't need to agree with you. I will support you, and I will defend your right to do that, to disagree with me. And that's what we want. So I want to thank you for watching. This is the end of our segment. Again, like, subscribe, share, hit the bell, give me some comments. Remember, that it was about uncivility, so try to keep it civil so that everyone can have a voice and not have to be shut down, because we don't want that. Thank you very much.